All right, music fans, welcome. Harmless Dave here again, talking about real issues, real music, and doing it in real time for um, real people just like you and just like me. All right, so a couple of housekeeping issues here to address the beginning of the video. Thank you for all your support, new patrons coming in. I appreciate that. And it's, I think, well-timed because there's something kind of weird happening with my YouTube revenue. And what's suspicious about it is the fact that we're going into the holiday advertising season, which tends to be the more robust time of year for people on YouTube and other money-making, ad revenue generating platforms. And I've seen a steady increase over the years, but looking back, I've noticed a bit of a decline that's starting to happen over the last few weeks. So I bring that to your attention because it is important that if you like what you're hearing and you want to support the channel, even at $1 a month, if say 1/3 of the subscribers here decided they were going to give $1 a month to support the channel, then I'm pretty much not relying on this ad revenue. And I know there are other ways to earn revenue, like memberships and things like that. And right now, I'd like to just stay with the Patreon model. So for now, but we'll see what happens in the future. So if you're thinking about supporting the channel, it would be much appreciated. Now, Eric Clapton, every day, Eric Clapton is in the news. This time, Rolling Stone did an article, or somebody did an article about Rolling Stone's article regarding Eric Clapton's talk with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What's really interesting to me is you would think a guy like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would have a lot of street credibility with a publication like Rolling Stone and all of those sort of old school, old time liberal. And I'm not talking about the kind of liberals that exist now. I'm talking about the liberals from years gone by, the anti-war people, the people who believed in free speech. They may disagree with you, but they would fight for your right to continue to say what you're saying. In other words, they would support people who don't support an information embargo, because that's what we currently have now. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the anti-thing guy. He is just known to be that. He's not the son of a slain, most likely would have been president of the United States, right? Most likely. And when you think of all the people who were targeted back in those days, whether it was JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, there does seem to be a thread that runs through all of that. And that to me is far more interesting as far as if you want to do some investigative reporting and tie it all together. And maybe also tie together the fact that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. doesn't go with the crowd. He has decided that humanity, saving humanity and being a part of the solution is way more important than just going along to get along with these people who, no matter what you do, no matter what Eric Clapton says to these people, like, gee, did you see what happened to me? I did what you told me to do. Everybody told me to do this. I did it. And I keep saying this over and over. And the reason I keep saying it over and over is because I don't understand how someone cannot look at that and say, yeah, I understand where Eric Clapton is coming from. And, but moving forward, I guess Eric is supposed to just forget about this and require people do the thing in order to attend his concerts like everybody else does. I mean, hey, if you're Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, right? They both got the thing, and I think they're still requiring everybody to do the thing in order to attend their shows, which is completely mind-blowing, because they're proving that what they're advocating for isn't working. They're proving it by being in the media and saying this thing really kicked my ass. But hey, and again, the other part of this that really frustrates me is the lack of intellectual curiosity, and it's a mass hypnosis. It's a mass omission of information. And yes, here's the kicker. All right, so if you're not already looking for alternative media sources, places like Rumble, Rockfin, Odyssey, and look, YouTube at times permits things that you'd be surprised about. They permit discussions that don't come out and blatantly say, this particular measure doesn't seem to be working, and saying it in the most blunt and harsh terms. Just like those who had questions about the election results were told to go pound sand, that it had already been certified and there's nothing you can do about that. And that's true. But you can have an opinion. See, this is the weird thing now. If Eric Clapton has an opinion on this entire thing based on his own experiences, both having, a reaction and also watching as like his concert at Wembley, right, was canceled. And so he did this Unplugged album instead. And he's probably not going to make any money off the Unplugged album. He'll probably lose money. He'll be lucky to break even. So go out and purchase a physical copy of The Lady in the Balcony. I believe it has a CD and a DVD. So that's a good way to support Eric Clapton right now. I mean, make them print more copies of that album. And even if it's music that kind of is stuff that you would already own in your collection, whether it was the Unplugged show from '92 or other albums by Clapton or blues artists. And I would still, again, I do this all the time. I don't need to buy physical music, but I do it because I want to support the artists. And I look at it now as kind of like a souvenir. Look at me, I've got souvenirs. I've got a collection of souvenirs behind me. And do I use them all the time? No, it's easier just to stream. And it's, again, everything is easier now. There's no struggle. There's no difficulty in anything. And we are becoming just more complacent, more lulled into this false sense of security through artificial intelligence. And each day I hear new things about what they're going to do, how they're going to make food more accessible to people, how they're going to make food grow, what they're going to do chemically to alter things. And then you're going to trust these people who are coming at you saying you must do this particular thing. I get it. We're not natural organisms anymore. If the water is polluted, the air is polluted, the plants that grow, are they safe? The fish we know aren't safe for the most part. They contain mercury and all this crap that's in there. And it's just sad. And yes, we need to clean up, not like eliminate carbon, but we need to clean up the world. We need to clean up the oceans. And I'm not a big, tree hugger, but I understand that true conservation is far different than today's, let's get rid of carbon environmentalism. That's not the issue. The issue is that we are a careless people. We don't care about one another. Therefore, we don't really care about, throwing a medical device. By the way, if I see 10 medical devices on the ground when I go for a walk, that is a low count for the day. Nobody's talking about the pollution that this is creating. And I know wildlife of all kinds are going to suffer the consequences, whether it's fish or birds or whatever. People obviously are facing those consequences now. So again, a bit of a tangent here, but it's interesting that they're covering an article that was put out, a talk that was given. And it's interesting, at least they're giving it a little bit of airplay, if you know what I mean, between Kennedy and Clapton. And they have this super intelligent discussion about what's going on. And, I can read a few excerpts from it here. So they also talked, I believe, to Van Morrison at one point, where they quoted something that Van Morrison said. But it's interesting that the guitarist spoke to prominent anti-thing advocate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for an interview featured on his website, The Defender. Over the past year, there's been a lot of disappearing, little dust around with people moving away quickly, Clapton said. And it has, for me, refined the kind of friendships I have. He added that the mainstream media turning on him has made the last few years especially difficult. Now, the fact that they put that in there, and Clapton says Rolling Stone is running a slur campaign, when you're saying things about Eric Clapton, it's like a 50-year-old or a 45-year-old accusation or something like that, to bridge a narrative together that Clapton is a bad person. He hates a certain group of people, even though his entire career he surrounded himself with those kind of people. And then, some people that can't really get on him for that, because obviously he's not out there working for anyone who wears, white robes or whatever, sheets over their head. That's not what Clapton is doing. Clapton has always surrounded himself with really talented musicians who happen to be African American. And I don't think he does a quota system. I think he goes and recruits the best people for the job. His band is a great example of that, his current band. And you would think a publication would come to Clapton's defense at some point and say, you know what? I don't think this guy is a bigot. That's not the issue here. The issue is he's not going along with the prevailing narrative. That's the issue. And so why isn't he going along with the narrative? And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that's somebody who maybe we should pay attention to, right? Why do people not want to? Because he's because it just is anti-thing. It's like someone who's anti-abortion, right? You can't even have a conversation with that person. These people, they're like, oh, well, you're not for women's rights. And then if you argue a little nuance there and come up with your logic and reasoning, it's just that this is how they frame this all the time. Here's a group of people over here who are crazy, insane, and they're anti. And when you put the whatever that is, it's a word fragment, anti, and you turn a word into something else, anti-intelligence. Would be like the FBI, anti-intelligence. You immediately make it sound like, oh, this is a negative person who has negative views and who is someone you ought to stay away from. Because and this is the problem too sometimes with my channel, even when I was just talking up straight music stuff, it was, oh, Dave doesn't like everything. He's being critical of this guy's vocals. Yeah, I'm critical of it because I listen to it and I go, it sucks. Or he's singing in the wrong key, or he's cracking. And, and then in some cases with certain bands, it's like, oh, they're using a vocal track. That's pretty obvious. And smart people, other than yours truly, smarter people, I should say, detect those things and report them. And they're okay because they have friends or they can do it here and there. But when I do it, it's like, oh, here's this guy who knows nothing about music, and he's going to start opining about how this guy can't sing anymore. And everybody knows he showed up for the show. So that makes him really good because he showed up. And I go, you know what? I'd rather go listen to a cover band. I would. At a certain point, somebody kind of ages out of the system and they're pretending to be good. I think Peter Cetera smartly said, you know, when I left, I could still kind of sing pretty well. And yeah, he was singing stuff down, but he wasn't embarrassing. You know what I mean? He was, everything was tuned down, but he didn't sound embarrassing. And he's like, I listen to some of these guys and I'm like, yeah, don't want to end up like that. Want people to remember me for being able to sing. So what does this have to do with the Clapton, Robert F. Kennedy, Rolling Stone? This is just the way everything is marketed now. You can't have a conversation with someone who is anti something. They may have a really good reason for why they believe what they believe, but nobody wants you to talk about it. Because if that information gets out, some people might actually agree with you. And then what are we going to do? Because then critical thinking makes a comeback rather than just this, oh, well, again, not to use my stupid analogy, but everybody does this, Eric. The experts say, I heard experts say this morning, protocols, experts say, fact checkers say, I'm not buying it anymore. This is gaslighting at a level which is going to cause permanent damage to people's psychological makeups. Going through life, we're always going to think that no matter what I say, it's going to be fact checked. It's going to be someone's going to come along with their own wall of propaganda, just a wall, it's an unstoppable wall. And no matter where you go, that's why I think short term, this model that we're currently in with social media and videos and everything, it's not sustainable. We're going to have to create competing marketplaces, by the way, that reward people for doing the work, just like YouTube has. All right. This is what they do. They've got this hanging over you like, hey, here's the carrot. Here's the carrot. And so I want to talk about the truth, but if you do, your carrot goes away, you know, and this is important to understand that this stuff has got to be ramped up quickly because there are going to be more and more people that lose their livelihood. Important voices are going to be silenced, and then you're not going to know where to find them. You know, where's Robert F. Kennedy? You know, is he out there? Is he on NBC News tonight? Nope. Is Eric Clapton going to be discussed in a proper context where he went and did the thing and then he had a reaction to the thing and now he's speaking out against not only the thing, but the tyranny that is destroying the concert industry? Van Morrison, too, he's been talking about this. And people go, oh, but we've got to do this for the greater good. The greater good is shutting down people's livelihood and scaring them, scaring and fear. It's all fear. It's fear is going to do more long-term damage than anything that's currently happening out there. And experts say it's true. Okay, I'm just experts say, and there are experts that do say that, but you won't hear that in any kind of fact checking, because I can come back and say, yeah, experts say that locking down a population is going to do severe psychological harm to that community. Experts say, and go ahead, fact check it all day long. But here's the thing. They just want to present one perspective, and presenting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an anti-thinger, Eric Clapton as being this malcontent or whatever, who's had a timeline of severe violations when it comes to the ruling class and their opinion of him, even though, you know, putting all this together didn't happen until recently. In other words, how come this didn't happen to Eric Clapton in 1989, right? or 1997. I mean, pick a year. Eric Clapton is 76 years old. I mean, if you're going to impugn someone's character, you think you would have figured that out a little faster, right? Age 25, whatever. And, they talk about like substance abuse and what other people have said about him. It's like, really? Rolling Stone, the magazine who pretty much used to advocate for the whole Timothy Leary worldview, and now they're coming down on Eric Clapton. Can we all, here's my punchline and I'll wrap up. Can we all just live our lives and let these people kind of be miserable? And I would advise them, I would say at some point, because of the negativity, people will, even the people that agree with you I think are getting fatigue here. I think it's watching, the world around us kind of disintegrate. And politically right now, these people don't have any, leg to stand on, because they're just saying, we love chaos. We love this new world order that's coming. We embrace all of this technology that's going to replace what human beings do. And that includes the music industry, by the way, because that's already happened. Popular music right now is all computer generated crap. It's not the lady in the balcony. You won't be hearing that even on your local classic rock station, because now it's controversial. Like, Baby, It's Cold Outside. You can't play that because it's kind of rapey. I don't know if you heard, but it's kind of rapey, even though you've got people talking in songs right now about doing the most horrific and horrendous things to other human beings, men doing them to women, things like that. And that's the music that sells. And then you have these concerts where a bunch of people with a dark negative energy show up and 9 people are dead. And if you question it, like Ace Frehley, and you say, seems like maybe a dark spirit there. Now, again, is it hypocritical for Ace to do that? Yeah, a little bit, because he was in a band that had imagery and things like that certainly would promote, especially in a younger mind. And we're getting back to the Parents Music Resource Commission, whatever it was called. Maybe Tipper Gore was right. I don't know. Maybe Tipper Gore was right. I don't think a warning label, though, is going to do any good. Just saying, a warning label for a kid is like, yeah, I'm going to go buy this album because it tells me not to do it. It's just like all the people who are questioning the so-called science today, and they're looking at issues and they're telling me I can't use this horse paste stuff. Yeah, I want to go get some. And that's human nature. And then when you do something rebellious like that and you step out of line, they're all like, hey, what are you doing? We're not going to get through this unless everybody conforms. It's unless you change the programming of the human brain, which I think is underway, and I think that's the goal, you're never going to get 100% compliance on anything, no matter, and that would be ridiculous, because then we'd just be robots, right? Maybe Dennis DeYoung was right when he started talking about this stuff back in the 1980s. And he kind of was predictive programming, doing those records where we were human and then we were becoming less human. And he was worried about that. And now here we are. So there you have it. One crazy stream of consciousness video where I did not stay on topic, but the main topic is, again, how the media portrays a guy like Eric Clapton and a guy like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's courageous, guy who kind of speaks with a bit of a speech impediment, a little more difficult to listen to. But some of the things he says are very, very important. And if you haven't heard him speak on these issues, you will learn a lot. And you don't have to be a guy who loved the Orange Man, right, to like Robert F. In fact, I don't want to get into it now, but certainly those two people had stuff in common at the beginning of all this. And then I think money got offered to Trump and things changed. Things changed a lot. So again, this is why it's really hard to trust any politicians. It just is. The influence, the temptation that money has, it's just apparently really hard to overcome. That's why I think we need a decentralized revolution. That's why I'm more of a libertarian, because we need to get back to individuals running their own lives and governments that are local and accountable. Right now, in Washington D.C., none of that. That's all just a takeover. That's a federal takeover of everything that you believe in. It just is. It just is. Even when you think the good guys are in charge, there are a bunch of bureaucrats and bad guys who work behind the scenes to undermine the good guy that you think you put in office. And then sometimes they appoint the perfect puppet who doesn't even have, a mind of his own, who can't even think straight. And that's where we are right now. So anyway, those are my views. Sorry, I know this isn't a straight up music video, that's for sure. But eventually I will come back and talk about music. Don't forget to, again, check out Patreon. Got a lot of new patrons, and I'm thankful for that. But when I see algorithms that don't make sense at this time of year, I'm wondering, because they can flip a switch here and there and change the flow of people showing up and seeing the videos and notifications. Make sure you hit the bell to get notifications on new videos. That's really important. And then share the videos, put the videos on repeat play, whatever you need to do. It's helpful and I appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.